Today we're going to be going over how to do a stretchy brim on a crochet hat. This should work for just about any crochet hat. I'm going to be doing this on a front post double crochet hat. I did do a tutorial on how to make this hat a couple weeks ago. I can leave a link in the description below to this video if you would like to learn how to make one of these hats. They are very nice though. They're really warm, and with winter coming up, they're an excellent addition to your closet. So the things you're going to need is the same size hook that you used to make your hat. I used a H8 or a 5mm hook, yarn needle, and a pair of scissors. So I don't have any more of this specific yarn, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't use it because it would make it hard to see. So I'm going to be using this lighter brown. It's almost like a teddy bear brown, but I'm going to be using this for my brim so it kind of matches and also everyone can see the stitches clearly. Now, when it comes to making a stretchy brim, there are two options. One, you can start with the brim and then crochet your hat around it, or two, you have your hat and you're crocheting your brim onto it. I will be going over both methods today. So this is the method where you make your brim first and then make your hat around it. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to do that one first because I'll be actually making one where you like have your hat first later. And personally, I do recommend making the hat first. But if you're going to do your stretchy brim first, you're going to want to do a slip knot, leaving a relatively long tail. And then you're going to want to chain however long or however wide you want your brim to be. So I'm going to be doing like 9 stitches, and I'm also going to be doing single crochet. Personally, I recommend doing either single crochet or half double crochet for brims, but you can actually get away with doing pretty much any basic stitch. So single, half double, and double, but the bigger your stitches are, the less stretch you will have. So I'm going to be doing single crochets. So starting in your second chain from the hook, you're going to just single crochet all the way across your chain. And if there is anything you don't understand how to do in this video, I do have a full playlist that is like tutorials for beginners or something like that, that goes over like all kinds of beginner stuff, including each individual stitch. Everything used in this video should have a video corresponding to it, like every stitch should have a video corresponding to it in my playlist. So once we have our first row here, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and now we're going to be doing single crochets again, but we're not going to be doing them in both loops. We're only going to be using the back loop. So as you can see, your stitches kind of look like little V's. The part of the V that is facing you is the front loop, and the part of the V that is facing away is the back loop. So we're just going to be using the back loop, which is inserting your hook only into the back loop. So once again, you're going to go in the middle of that V and only pull up the back loop. And then single crocheting just like you would normally. So one more time, middle of the V, back loop. You only have like the one loop on your hook from your stitch instead of both. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And you're just going to do that all the way across. So this is called the back loop single crochet, and it is usually abbreviated as either BLSC for back loop single crochet, or sometimes people will put BLO in the front of their row. So in BLO, for example, that means in back loops only, if you see that. Similarly, if you see FLO or FL, that is front loops. Once more, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and you're going to do the exact same thing again. You have your V's facing you, you're just going to do the back loop. So I'm going to do a couple of these back loop only rows so you can see how they look when you've got a little bit going. And then I will explain the method of making a hat around them. So here I have done 10 rows. As you can see, they kind of make a zigzag, and they're also fairly textured. This is because if you keep doing only back loop only, then you'll get like this zigzag, and it's pretty stretchy. So if you were going to be making your brim first, and then your hat around it, let's say this is like a whole hat. Obviously it's not, but let's pretend it is for the sake of this video. What you're going to want to do is fold your work in half, and then you're going to be slip stitching your two sides together. Oops. And again, you're going to want to use the back loop for your most recent row. So that is, it looks like this. You've chained your one. You're going to want to hold it like this with your most recent row facing away from you and fold upwards. This is just so everything looks neater and it's easier to crochet. So then you're going to take your hook, slip through your stitch, your remaining chain from your first row, and then go in on the back loop of your most recent row. Yarn over, pull through, and then pull through for a slip stitch. And then you're going to be doing the exact same thing on your next stitch. So pull through, pull through. So once more, going through the chain from your first row, and then going through the back loop of your stitch on your most recent row, and then slip stitching. And you're just going to do that across however many stitches you have. Okay, so now that I've completely slip stitched it up, it looks pretty good. I mean, if you look closely, you can see it, but from a distance, you're not going to be able to see. It. And if you're really worried about it, then you can flip it inside out, and it really becomes invisible then. So basically, to make your hat, after you have flipped it or whatever you're going to do, you're just going to chain however many stitches you need. I'm going to do 3 because let's say I'm doing a double crochet. And then you're just going to go into each row and stitch as you would normally. And you can use this this stretchy method for like pant legs or sweaters, both like the border around, their sleeves, their bottom, whatever. And of course hats, you can really use it for whatever, but you're just going to go through and see where each row is and just do whatever stitch you're going to do in each row. Oops. And then this is just a small example of how you would do it if you were going to do your brim first. So I will now begin how to do the brim directly onto the hat. So you're going to want to start where your seam is on your other hat. Mine is right here. If you don't have a seam, start wherever you want. So you're going to want to slip stitch to that first stitch, just to attach your yarn to it. You can also do a single crochet here if you would prefer, but I'm just going to be doing a slip stitch. And now I am once again going to be chaining 9 because that's how long I want my brim to be. So 3, 6, 9, yep. And then you're going to be doing like the same exact process as last time. Going in your second chain from the hook, or if you're doing a different stitch, going however many chains away that you need. And then just going to be single crocheting right down the chain. So from here, you have two options. You can either work your tail in here, or you can leave it out. Personally, I'm going to recommend leaving it out because if you just work it around, the more you stretch your hat, then eventually the tail can work its way out. So it will hold it, but eventually it'll come out if you just work it in here. So I'm just going to sew it in at the end. But then for single crochet, you're actually going to skip one stitch and go into the next stitch, and once again just slip stitch into it. After you've slip stitched, you're going to turn your work, and once more you're just going to be doing the single crochet and back loop only for this row. So once you're here, go ahead, chain one, flip your work over again, and repeat the last row. So single crochet, back loop only. So as you can tell, this very bottom one might be a bit hard to get your hook through. You haven't done anything wrong if it is, it just sometimes it's harder to get through. So once more, you're going to be skipping a stitch and slip stitching into this one. So the reason why we skip a stitch is because if you can see, if you put your brim lined up to it, the row that you just did should technically cover that stitch. Like that row is basically one stitch here, and if this row started on this side instead of this side, then you would be slip stitching here. But because when you're working rows, you start one on one side and then the next on the other side, you're going to be skipping one stitch. And you're pretty much just going to do that all around. So back loop only, chain one, back loop only again, skip one stitch on the base of your hat, slip stitch, and repeat. So I'm going to go ahead and go around and do this, and then I will come back and show you how to finish it off. So you should have something that looks similar to this. You might have your hook on this end, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you end your What does matter is that you're ending your brim either in the same stitch as this one here or the one right before it. That's what really matters most. Now from here you need to decide if you want your single crochets on the outside or on the inside of your hat. I want mine on the inside, so I'm just gonna go ahead and flip this bad boy. Hang on. Flip my stretchy brim here. I could flip the entire hat inside out, but I don't really feel like doing that. So then, just like the other one, you're going to be doing the same exact thing. So entering in your first row, a stitch from your first row, and then going into the back stitch. Sherlock, that's very rude. You're being rude. My cat's chasing a bug or something? Anyway, going over the back stitch, or the back loop of your last row. And then just going on ahead and slip stitching. And you're going to do that all the way down your last and first row. And this just pretty much seals it up for you. That way it all looks nice and neat. And again, you can totally use like this hem or brim or whatever you want to call it. You can use it on just about anything really. I don't know if I would recommend using it on a blanket, but any type of clothing for sure you can use it. And voila. So there was some form of tiny wasp that somehow got into my house. Really glad I went out there and got it because I do not want my cats to get stung. But moving on. So now you'll have something that looks like this. Mind you, we've not fastened off or anything yet, which will be your next step. So your next step, as you can tell, you know, it's not fully closed there. So what we're going to do is we're going to fasten off, leaving like a relatively long tail. And now we're going to take our yarn needle and sew it up. Which I suppose if you prefer sewing, you could totally sew your first row to your last row instead of using slip stitches for it, but I just prefer slip stitches. So what I'm going to do is take this edge right here, and I'm just going to go into the other edge like that, and I'm going to just do that twice, just to make sure that it's really firm. And then from there, I'm just going to kind of weave it in a little bit before I tie it off anywhere. Just kind of making sure everything is thoroughly down and sewn in properly. And then I will, after I've done a few stitches, I'll go ahead and tie it off. And this part is just fastening down, so this isn't actually weaving in my ends yet. I'm just tying everything off. So that way it's neat and firm. And now, after I've done that, is when I'm going to go ahead and start weaving in my ends. So you're just going to go in to your closest row and start weaving your needle in through your stitches like this. And how much you weave in really depends on you. I like to weave in as much as possible so it's firmer. And I don't recommend just doing it in a straight line either, because again, if it's just a straight line, it's easier for it to come out. So usually I like to do that and then go over a few stitches and then do another line down said stitches. I think Sherlock has found another bug. So now that's pretty firm, I like that. And I'm going to cut off the end, so that one's weaved in nicely. And then I'm going to do pretty much the same exact thing with our beginner thread. I'm just going to weave it in. So after you've finished your stretchy brim, this is how it'll look. This one doesn't quite match as well as I had hoped, but again, I didn't have this yarn, and regardless, I would have used a color that would be easier to see on camera anyway. So yeah, it might look like it's a little tight, but in actuality, it stretches quite a bit here, as you can tell. So it does match like the rest of the hat, and it is shaped perfectly to the hat shape. And I will now be showing a clip of me putting it on. So then this is how the hat looks. And this is how it'll look when worn. Ooh. And then if you don't like it, you could always flip it inward like that to hide it. Or if your hat's too long, you can flip it upward. But yeah, that's how you do a stretchy brim on pretty much any crochet hat.